Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, the 18th of March, 2019, the 11th of Adar Bet, 5779. And here I sit in Jerusalem on Monday morning, and I don't know what it is. It seems that all of this bad news falls into my lap. Things happening, attacks, terror attacks happening on Sundays in Israel. And it's probably not a coincidence because our enemies, the jihadists, know that Israelis on Sundays are out and about, soldiers going back to their bases, commuters going to work, just a flurry of activity on Sunday morning. It seems like that is when they decide they're going to launch these murderous attacks against Jews here in Israel simply because they are Jews. It pains me to bring you the following information. Just several minutes ago here, we found out that Rabbi Achiad Ettinger from Eli, a father of 12, who was injured in yesterday's terror attack near Ariel, succumbed to his wounds. He was murdered by an Arab jihadist. In addition, yesterday on the scene, 19-year-old Sergeant Gal Keidan from Beersheba was murdered at the Ariel Junction at 9:45 a.m. yesterday, Sunday morning, after struggling with a terrorist who stabbed him, took his gun, stole his gun, shot him, got into a car, or shot some more people first, then got into a car, and continued to carry out his rampage, going to another bus station nearby and opening fire. At this time, another soldier remains in critical condition, fighting for his life. But here we are, Monday morning in Jerusalem, 2 Israelis, 2 Jews murdered in yesterday's attack near the Ariel Junction. Rabbi Ettinger, the head of the Oz and Emunah Yeshiva in South Tel Aviv. This is all very new. Just found out just a few minutes ago that he succumbed to his wounds. He died a hero, according to this report from Arutz Sheva, Israel National News. Rabbi Ettinger passed the scene, realized an attack was taking place, returned to the scene, cocked his gun as he approached the terrorist, but then the terrorist spotted him and shot the rabbi, murdering him. That's another 12 orphans here in Israel as a result of yesterday's stabbing and shooting, and a young IDF soldier who lost his life defending the state of Israel and the Jewish people. So it is a very, very sad day here in Israel. And on today's show, I'm gonna talk about this and the news, and I didn't want to have anybody on at this point. No guests on today's show. I'm not going to be doing any interviews. I'd hoped to talk to somebody who was running for Knesset, perhaps, in the realm of politics, and we'll get to other political stories, but I just didn't feel like it, honestly. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Maybe this is my therapy. I don't know. But that's the story. Again, this is Josh Hasten. It is the 18th of March. You can get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook. Check out my page, Josh Hasten Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram as well. But to get back to yesterday's attack, a manhunt continues for the terrorist reported here by the J Post, who killed an IDF soldier and a prominent rabbi. And as I mentioned, another soldier in critical condition at this point. Keidan, the young soldier from Beersheba, a combat soldier in the Artillery Corps, 334th Fire Brigade, promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant, the youngest of 3 siblings, born to parents who made Aliyah from somewhere in the former Soviet Union. He will be laid to rest this morning here. It's now 10:50. I'm recording at 11 a.m. in the Beersheba Military Cemetery. As I said, just to clarify the details, according to the IDF, the attacker stole a car from a civilian, fled the scene, escaped, drove down to the Gitai Avishar junction, carried out a drive-by shooting there, injuring the other soldier before escaping into a village, and the manhunt continues. Just a difficult day here in Israel, one that we've seen many, many times before, many times throughout Jewish history, many difficult days throughout Jewish history, and this is another one, the loss of two precious Jewish lives, again, simply because they were Jews. That's really what it is. And it's just difficult. It's difficult to get the words out here this morning. It's difficult to talk about it, but I definitely would like to bring you all the latest about other things going on. But that's certainly, unfortunately, the top story here. I mentioned politics before. The High Court in Israel has barred Dr. Michael Ben-Ari from the Otzma Yehudit party from running for Knesset. He is not allowed to run for Knesset. He was banned by the High Court. The J-Post reports here the High Court of Justice disqualified Otzma Yehudit candidate Michael Ben-Ari from running due to what they call racism. At the same time, though, they permitted all of the Arab parties from running. Initially, the Central Elections Committee disqualified the Balad United Arab List Party and another candidate from the Hadash Party, Ofer Kasif, the Arab Party's only Jewish candidate. They had disqualified them, and the High Court overruled that decision and allowed the Arab parties to run, and instead banned Dr. Michael Ben-Ari from running in the upcoming April 9th Knesset election. Justice Minister Ariel Sgt said that this is the last straw for the High Court's justices. They have changed themselves into political actors. The High Court decision to disqualify Ben-Ari, and on the other hand, to approve the eligibility of Arab political parties which support terror, is a massive and mistaken intervention going to the heart of Israeli democracy. Sgt vowed that Monday morning she will announce a plan to transform the judiciary during her next term in the Knesset. So again, a party, the Balad Party, whose candidates have sided with terrorists. One of their MKs spied for Hezbollah. Another MK is going to prison for aiding terrorists, for giving terrorists in jail cell phones. That party is kosher. But Michael Ben-Ari, him running for Knesset, that is deemed not kosher. Ben-Ari's lawyer, Yitzhak Baum, in his defense, Ben-Ari was accused of being a Kahanist, of making racist comments. Baum, his attorney, said he is not a racist. Any comments he made against Arabs were directed against violent Arabs or terrorists. Yet the High Court rules that he is a racist through and through, and therefore he cannot run for the Otzma Yehudit party. At the same time, a Israel Beitenu lawyer told the court that Kasif, that is the Jew on the Arab party list who is now allowed to run, that his statements, and this is what he said in the past, he has called the state of Israel and Justice Minister Sgt and others Nazis, neo-Nazis. The Israel Beitenu lawyer says that has obviously crossed the line for someone running for the Knesset. Yet this guy Kasif is allowed to run. He has called IDF soldiers and our Justice Minister a Nazi, but he's kosher. He is allowed to run. At the same time, yesterday's terrorist murder, this guy Ofer Kasif blamed not on Hamas or Islamic Jihad or Fatah or incitement. against the state of Israel. He said that this was the fault of Prime Minister Netanyahu. That's why the attack took place yesterday. Not the terrorist, but the Prime Minister. He blamed the Prime Minister for yesterday's attack, saying the following. Here's a quote in the J Post. The Palestinians are butchered and killed by the Israeli authorities. They are killed in mass on a daily basis, and their trees are lit on fire. The guilt of today, that was yesterday's terror attack, is on the head of the Prime Minister and the government. Because if the occupation goes on, people will keep dying, especially Palestinians. So he's all over the place. Yet bottom line is he is blaming Israel. He's blaming Netanyahu. He's blaming the government, but not blaming the terrorist. And this guy, this Kasif, can run for Knesset, and Ben Ari cannot run for Knesset. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a messed up situation. And honestly, looking at the upcoming election, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. But I'm definitely a believer in the reform of the High Court. And that's something Ariel Shaked wants to get done. She's made progress this time around as Justice Minister. A lot more work obviously needs to get done. But this is just unbelievable. The hypocrisy here is just unbelievable. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to win the respect of the world? Is that what this is? They're trying to be part of this new enlightened left wing, and I hate using left and right wing, the terminology, worldview, progressive, whatever that is. They're letting Arabs run who are against the Jewish state of Israel. They are allowed to represent their constituents in Knesset. And I don't even think they even truly represent many of them. But nevertheless, they are allowed to run. But Michael Ben Ari, whose sons serve in the IDF, he is not allowed to run. It's a messed up situation. But as a result, our good friend Gil Hoffman from the Land of Israel Network and the J Post reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu's Likud party, for the first time since the Blue and White announced that they were running, Likud is back in the lead, 31-30, based on this recent poll. And perhaps more importantly, Netanyahu's right of center bloc now has a 63-57 majority over Gantz and the left, or left of center, any way you want to look at it, bloc. So if everything, again, there's a long way to go. There's still several weeks until the election, but things are looking more up and up for the, I don't know, call them so-called right, if you will. I mean, those who are fans of the Likud will say this is a right-wing, perhaps right-wing Likud, and Likud is only, the only way to go. And the argument is you have to vote for a big party and strengthen the prime minister. If not, you will get the blue and white, perhaps. All different types of philosophies and strategies when you go to an election. But as of now, the Likud is back on top. Our good friend Gil Hoffman, host here on the Land of Israel Network, reports. Let's take a few seconds for station identification and come right back. You're listening to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. It is Monday, the 18th of March, 2019. We are going to take a short break and come right back with more.
Tune in to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network, where we have been introducing the world to the candidates running for Knesset. From the Meretz party on the far left to the Otzma Yehudit party on the right. From the Likud to the Blue and White party. From the Labor Party to the Zehut party. We at Inside Israel Today have been interviewing politicians from across the political spectrum who are running in the April 9th election. Tune in to Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here. Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is the 18th of March, 2019, 11th of Adar, 5779. Getting ready for the holiday of Purim coming up later this week. You got to be happy in the month of Adar, as hard as it is, with this horrible news of two Jews, two Israelis murdered yesterday. Somehow with Purim later on this week, Thursday, and then Shushan Purim Friday, we have to find some happiness and we have to find some positive amidst the sorrow of 2 more Jews being murdered here in their homeland. Switching gears here now, turning to the situation in Gaza. Hamas is brutally beating demonstrators in the streets of Gaza. The Times of Israel says that 7 reporters are now being held, brutally beaten by Hamas for covering these protests. We are now, I guess, on yesterday was day 3 of the protests. If they continue, today will be day 4. Or actually wrong, sorry, 4 days 4 and 5, but nevertheless, there are people who are protesting quality of life down in Gaza, blaming Hamas for their sorrows. And Hamas is not having it. Hamas is using live fire to put down the demonstrators. It's ironic. Hamas is using live fire. And I saw 1 condemnation so far. Barely the world makes a peep about that. But when Israel uses necessary self-defense techniques against Hamas and their supporters who try to infiltrate into Israel and murder the first Jew they see, then Israel gets criticizing for using necessary force. Yet overall, the world is quiet when Hamas is using live fire against their own people in the streets, arresting journalists, beating journalists, and everything that Hamas does, always using their people, pushing them to the front lines, women and children, and firing behind them, firing rockets. And we'll get to the rockets soon. Rockets were fired into Tel Aviv last week. But always using women and children as human shields, and most of the world, 99% of the world, is quiet. Ynet says no reports on the numbers of injured as a result of this Hamas crackdown on these quality of life protests. Again, it started on Friday. Thursday night, 2 long-range Iranian-made missiles were fired at Tel Aviv. And in response, Israel hit 100 Hamas targets. And then Hamas fired 7 more rockets into Israel, mainly into the Sderot and Gaza area. And then we got to another ceasefire, which is what? The 200th ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. And then the Friday weekly clashes, the so-called March of Return, which is now been going on for a year, they were called off for the first time since last March, trying to quiet the situation. But wait a minute. I thought these were spontaneous protests against Israel on the Gaza-Israel border. Wrong. Not spontaneous when Hamas has the right and the ability to tell people not to protest and the people listen. So they are not spontaneous. And the firing of the missile, some say now it was a mistake, and I don't understand how it was a mistake. I mean, you have missiles lined up at Tel Aviv. If you have 2 morons, let's call them that, accidentally launch 2 missiles at Tel Aviv, those missiles are still there. They're still pointed at Tel Aviv. So whether they're fired now or next week or next month, this isn't a mistake. Their goal is to launch missiles at Tel Aviv. Maybe the timing was off, but I wouldn't call this a mistake. I think this looks more like Hamas begging Israel to respond, to turn the attention away from what's going on with the residents there who are upset about their quality of life. That makes more sense to me. Try to tell the people, once Israel retaliates, look, it's Israel's fault. It isn't Hamas's. It's not our fault. Look what the Israelis are doing to us. To draw attention away from the dissatisfaction of the people, what better way to do it than fire rockets, fire missiles into Israel? But turning to the protesters, I mean, this is the way to get rid of Hamas. If more and more people take to the streets and go after Hamas, perhaps they will have the power and the ability to get rid of that evil in their midst. Those who generally just want to be left alone and don't want to bother Israel and just want to make a living for their families. I'm talking about those people. And they should be supported. But how do you support them? How do you support people who live under the brutal Hamas regime? What do? Well, if you're Israel, what you have to do, and it may be difficult at first for these people, is you have to stop providing them with aid. Israel has to stop. If they really want to help these people long term, stop enabling Hamas by sending in tons and tons of aid on a daily basis, a lot of it which is stolen by Hamas, but then that which reaches the people there improves their situation temporarily, and then they forget about the way they're being treated under Hamas. So I would say, as hard as it is, I would say cut off the aid, turn off the electricity, and let the people know that this is a result of what Hamas is doing for you, doing to you, rather. I would not send any IDF troops going door to door into Gaza. I would let this, and this could be the beginning of the end of Hamas, I would let this pan out and do whatever I could, if I was in charge here in Israel, to support the protesters, even if it meant making it a little bit harder on their lives in the short term, but letting them know you want long-term stability and to be able to feed your families, Hamas must go. That's what I would do. That's my opinion on that issue. This is the perfect time to get rid of Hamas by helping these people. When they have enough, when they have had enough and they protest, this is the time to get rid of Hamas. One of the things, though, that does bother me is the feeling that those rockets, again, 2 rockets fired at Tel Aviv on Thursday night, that those rockets are viewed as being a bigger deal than the rockets, the thousands of rockets which have rained down on the communities around Gaza. And to make my point, I mean, here you have reported in the J Post, Herb Keidan, an article saying that Israel views with, quote, utmost gravity the firing Thursday night of 2 rockets toward Tel Aviv. Prime Minister Netanyahu said on Sunday, even as the possibility of a major conflagration as a result of that incident was averted. Again, ceasefire. Right? But why are the rockets on Tel Aviv viewed with utmost gravity? Why not the rockets on the south as well? That bothers me. The double standard bothers me. Why is Tel Aviv more important and the residents there more important? Okay, it's a bigger city. All right, I understand that. It's where the defense ministry sits and all of that. But a Jewish life, an Israeli life is the same down at Sderot as it is in Tel Aviv. And several politicians have slipped, I would say, or maybe they did it outright and have basically claimed, and here you have the Prime Minister saying he views this with the utmost gravity. Every rocket fired on any Israeli community should be viewed with the utmost gravity, in my opinion. Prime Minister continued, Hamas bears responsibility of all the attacks from Gaza, whether the firing is intentional or an error. He said this at the beginning of the weekly cabinet meeting. Hamas claimed the rocket fire was a, quote, mistake. Netanyahu pointed out that as a result of the rocket fire, he directed the IDF to hit 100 Hamas targets in Gaza. Firing, listen, 100 targets, that's all, all good, but firing and targeting empty buildings, firing on 100 targets, if you know the targets are there, why not take them out before? Why wait for them to fire a rocket if you know that we are under threat from those targets? That I don't understand. We know that they're building their capabilities. Why wait until they have more capabilities and more rockets? Another thing that bothers me, this was reported yesterday. There's a report here. A Saudi-owned news website claimed over the weekend that the Shin Bet, Israel Security Agency the head of the agency, Nadav Argaman, met secretly in Cairo last week with Hamas leaders. That legitimizes. I thought Israel does not negotiate with terrorists or sit with terrorists. Yet, I mean, I understand there are all these ceasefires. I don't accept them, but I understand that Israel works out these ceasefires via Egypt. But if this is true, we are sitting with Hamas, legitimizing Hamas, viewing them as legitimate controllers of Gaza. That is shameful. If that is the case, if that is accurate, that is absolutely shameful. I hope that that's fake news, as they say. I hope that's not true, and that Israel is not sitting down with Hamas for any reason. I mean, that was the policy for years and years. I mean, I guess things changed once Israel legitimized the PLO and sat with them and sat with Arafat. But we got to make changes around here. I mean, that's what I'm going to be voting on. Which future leader of this country is going to get us on track? Which future leader in Israel is going to create a deterrence so that the terrorists fear their own shadow? And any of these so-called lone wolves, and I don't believe in lone wolf terrorists, they're all living under the PA or Hamas and being spoon-fed this hate on a daily basis. So in other words, their leaders are responsible as well. But which leader in Israel is going to create that deterrence so that anybody thinks over and over and over and over again before deciding to go and carry out a terror attack, knowing the ramifications and the justifiable punishment if these jihadists try to carry out an attack? That's the leader I'm looking for. Who is it? I don't know. Is he out there? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it Netanyahu? Is it Naftali Minister Bennett? Is it Moshe Feiglin? Is it Bezalel Smotrich, MK Smotrich? Who will create a real deterrence so that wannabe would-be terrorist decides that he is not going to do it because it's not worth it for him to carry out an attack, whether it's his family being deported, whatever it is. And I'm not going to, I'm not in a position to decide. I mean, the experts should know what will actually create that deterrence. That's for our leaders to figure out. And whatever it is, which leader will be brave enough to ignore condemnations from the world and all the other stuff and carry out a true policy of deterrence so that we stop these attacks, so that we stop these rockets and missiles and the daily rocket and firebomb attacks which take place on our roads and are never reported, which happen each and every day. Who will step forward? I hope it's somebody in this upcoming election. It's been far too long, folks. This didn't start in 1967. This didn't start in 1948 or 1929. This started way before that. And you could talk about the history of the Jewish people and how this really started 4,000 years ago, these anti-Semitic attacks against our people. But there's a difference now. The difference is we are home. This isn't 1939, and these aren't the Crusades and the pogroms and everything else that we've experienced throughout history. And the difference is, for the first time in 2,000 years, we are home and we have an army and we have our own country. So it's about time that we act like it. It's about time we show appreciation for what we have and do what's necessary to protect all of those who call Israel home and all the Jews who have come home after so long, after so many years of wandering. It is time for things to change. It is time to seize the day and use this opportunity as the strong power. And I have no problem saying we are the strong power. And I know there's a lot of guilt. Sad. It's sad. Jewish guilt out there that finally we are on top, which we are, despite it all, despite yesterday's attack and everything else. We are strong, and we need to show it. After 2,000 years, it's time to show it once and for all. maybe he's out there. Maybe he or she is out there, that leader who will get us back on course, who will steer this ship back on course. That is my hope. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. And I apologize for not having a guest on this week, but I just had so much on my mind, so much to say. And let's say Hashem Yakam Damam for those who were murdered in yesterday's attack. And let's hope for good news, and let's have a happy and joyous Purim as best as we can, despite everything going on. So I wish all the listeners out there who celebrate the holiday of Purim have a joyous festival of Purim, where we do actually celebrate a victory over hate, a victory over our enemies who were seeking our destruction. That's what Purim is all about. The military victory over those who were seeking the destruction of the Jewish people back in ancient Persia. But if you really understand it, not much has changed here so many years later. My name's Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Thank you so much to Ben Bresky, for getting all this audio put together, Tabitha Epstein for all the behind-the-scenes work that she does, and everyone else here at the Land of Israel Network. Purim Sameach from beautiful Jerusalem, wherever you are in this wonderful world of ours. Between now and when we talk again next week, please be safe. Shalom from Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish